Nobody in that house owned a bathroom scale, and nobody needed one. Black families in the 1970s stayed slim without trying, without counting a single calorie, without reading a single label on the back of a box. The women who cooked did not measure portions. The children who ran outside until the streetlights came on never once thought about burning anything off. They just lived, and the weight stayed where it was supposed to stay. There is something coming up at number 19 that had nothing to do with willpower. Number 8 will change the way you think about your own kitchen. And number 4 flips everything the diet industry has spent decades selling. Hit subscribe and stay with this one, because here are 25 reasons Black families stayed slim in the 1970s without ever counting a single calorie. Number 25. One plate and no seconds. In a 1970s Black household, you ate what was put in front of you, and you ate one plate of it. Your mother did not ask if you wanted more. She told you the kitchen was closed. If you tried to scrape the pot for another spoonful, she looked at you like you had lost your mind. That single plate was not a diet strategy. It was economics. Every serving came out of a budget stretched past its limit, and going back for seconds meant somebody else got less. Portion control was how things worked when food cost real money and waste was something no family could afford. Number 24. Walking was how you got anywhere. Most Black families in the 1970s had one car, and that car belonged to whoever drove to work. Everybody else walked. You walked to school. You walked to the corner store when your mother needed a quart of milk. You walked to church on Sunday and walked home carrying your Bible in your shoes because your mother was not going to let you scuff them on the pavement. Nobody called it exercise. Nobody counted steps. You just moved all day because there was no other option. The bodies those families carried were built by sidewalks, not treadmills. Number 23. Backyard gardens fed the table. In cities like Detroit, Atlanta, and Memphis, Black families turned small patches of dirt into rows of collard greens, tomatoes, okra, and pole beans. In the rural South, the garden stretched from the back porch to the fence line. Your grandmother did not go to the grocery store for vegetables. She went to the yard. What came out of that soil was fresh, unprocessed, and free. No preservatives, no sodium count on the label. A garden kept a family fed through the summer and sometimes deep into the fall, if the woman of the house knew how to put things up. Number 22. Water was the default drink. There was a pitcher on the counter or a hose in the yard, and that was what you drank. Kool-Aid showed up on special days. Soda was for cookouts and holidays, not for a regular Wednesday. Nobody kept a refrigerator stocked with 12 packs of cola in 1974 because that was a luxury most families skipped entirely. The daily drink was tap water, plain and cold, and nobody complained about it because there was nothing else to compare it to. Today, the average American takes in hundreds of liquid calories a day from sweetened drinks alone. In the 1970s, that number was close to nothing for most Black households. Number 21. Every meal was cooked from scratch at home. Takeout was rare. Fast food was something you got on a road trip, not on a Tuesday. Your mother or your grandmother stood at that stove and cooked real food with real ingredients every single night. Chicken was seasoned and fried in the kitchen, not handed through a window in a paper bag. Rice came from a bag of dry grain. Beans were soaked overnight and simmered the next day. Home cooking meant the family controlled every ingredient that went into that pot. No added sugars hiding in a bottled sauce. No chemical preservatives tucked into the breading. Home cooking kept the food honest, and honest food kept families lean. Number 20. Kids played outside from sunup to sundown. You were out the door after breakfast and you did not come back until the streetlights came on or your mother called your name loud enough for the whole block to hear. Tag, kickball, double dutch, riding bikes with no helmets, climbing trees, chasing each other through alleys and vacant lots. There were no video game consoles keeping you glued to the couch in 1973. There was a screen door, and it slammed behind you in the morning and did not open again until dinner. The outdoors was not a choice. It was where childhood happened. Here is something worth thinking about. The 1970s food landscape was a completely different world. The processed food industry was still growing. Frozen dinners existed, but most black families did not trust them and could not justify the price. Fast food chains were spreading across the country, but they had not yet reached every neighborhood. The corner store sold bread, milk, canned goods, and a few snacks behind the counter. It did not sell family-sized bags of chips or cases of flavored water with more sugar per bottle than a slice of cake. The food that was available was, by default, closer to whole. Not because anyone made a health-conscious decision, but because ultra-processed alternatives had not yet flooded the market. Number 19. There was no snacking culture. This is the one that catches people off guard because today, snacking is treated like a biological need. Entire grocery aisles are dedicated to things you eat between meals. But in a 1970s black household, you ate breakfast, you ate dinner, and if lunch happened, it was leftovers or a sandwich at the kitchen table. There was nothing in between. Your mother did not keep a bowl of trail mix on the counter. If you said you were hungry at 3 in the afternoon, the answer was simple: wait for dinner. This was how a household ran on a budget that could not afford extra food between meals. Eating happened at set times at the table with the family. You did not graze through the kitchen. You did not open the refrigerator door and stare into it looking for something to fill a feeling that had nothing to do with hunger. Your grandmother did not know the word insulin. She just knew that the kitchen had hours, and outside those hours, the answer was no. The result was a household full of people who were never overfed and never malnourished. They ate enough at the right times, and then they moved on with their day. Number 18. Sunday dinner was the feast, and the rest of the week stayed lean. The big meal, the one with the roast or the fried chicken and the macaroni and cheese and the pound cake cooling on the counter, that happened on Sunday after church. Monday through Saturday, the meals were simpler. Rice and gravy, beans and cornbread, a pot of soup stretched across 2 nights. The caloric load of the week was not evenly distributed. It peaked once on Sunday, and the rest of the days stayed modest. That rhythm gave the body 5 or 6 days of lighter eating for every 1 day of abundance. Number 17. No air conditioning meant the body worked harder just to exist. In a hot Georgia summer or a humid August night in Mississippi, black families sat on the porch with paper fans and slept with every window cracked open and a box fan humming in the corner. The body burns more energy when it has to regulate its own temperature without mechanical help. Sweating through a July afternoon without a thermostat was miserable, but it was metabolically active. Central air conditioning, which most black households did not have until well into the 1980s, removed that invisible calorie burn entirely once it arrived. Number 16. Breakfast was small or skipped entirely. Your father drank black coffee and walked out the door before the sun was fully up. Your mother ate what was left on the children's plates, if she ate at all. Breakfast in many black households was not the 3-course event that cereal commercials tried to make it. It was a piece of toast, maybe some grits with a pat of butter, maybe nothing at all. The body ran on last night's supper until lunchtime, and nobody felt cheated by that arrangement. Number 15. Leftovers were the next meal, and nobody apologized for it. When your mother made a big pot of greens on Monday, that same pot showed up again on Tuesday night, and sometimes it stretched to Wednesday. Leftovers were not reheated because they were easy. They were reheated because throwing food away did not happen in a household where every dollar had already been assigned a job. The food that was already cooked kept feeding the household until the pot was empty, and only then did a new one take its place. Repetition kept the quantities honest, and honest quantities kept the family fed without tipping into excess. Number 14. The work was physical, and it never stopped. In cities like Detroit and Chicago, black men worked factory floors, loading docks and construction sites. They stood for 8 hours or they lifted for 8 hours, and then they came home and did it again in the yard. In the South, the work was agricultural or service labor that kept a body moving from sunrise until quitting time. Women worked just as hard. They cleaned houses across town, stood on their feet all day in hospital kitchens and commercial laundry rooms, or bent over assembly lines for wages that barely covered the rent. Nobody in that generation needed a gym because the job already was one. 8 hours of physical labor 5 or 6 days a week burns more energy than any modern exercise class could replicate. And the work did not stop at the front door. There were floors to mop, yards to cut, fences to mend, porches to sweep, and steps to scrub on your hands and knees. Saturday was not a rest day. Saturday was the day you caught up on every chore the work week had pushed aside. That constant physical output was the invisible engine behind the lean frames you see in every family photograph from that era. Those shoulders and forearms were not sculpted in a weight room. They were earned by people who never once thought of their labor as fitness. They called it making a living. Before we go further, there is a reason this list exists. The shift did not happen because black families suddenly started making worse choices. The shift happened because the choices themselves changed. By the late 1980s, fast food had reached every neighborhood. Processed snacks got cheaper than fresh produce. Sugary drinks came in larger sizes for less money. Jobs moved from factory floors to desk chairs. Air conditioning became standard. School budgets cut physical education. The entire environment that had kept families lean for decades was systematically replaced by one designed to do the opposite. What you are hearing on this list is not a collection of diet tips. It is a portrait of an ecosystem that no longer exists. Number 13. Church fasting was woven into the rhythm of the year. Across denominations, black churches incorporated periods of fasting into the spiritual calendar, and families followed without question. Some households fasted before Easter. Some fasted the first Sunday of every month, eating nothing before the morning service. Some fasted whenever the pastor called the congregation into a full week of prayer and sacrifice. The reasons were always spiritual, but the physical effect was real. Regular fasting gave the digestive system time to rest and lowered caloric intake across the full year. Faith and physical discipline walked side by side in those families, and the body carried the evidence of both. Number 12. Real cooking fat was used in small, deliberate amounts. Your grandmother cooked with lard, bacon grease saved in a coffee can by the stove, or a knob of butter the size of her thumb. She used a spoonful at a time and did not pour from a plastic bottle. That spoonful went a long way because animal fat carries more flavor per gram than refined vegetable oil, which meant less was needed to make a dish taste right. Modern kitchens pour processed oils freely because they are cheap and nearly tasteless, which leads to using far more than anybody realizes. The 1970s kitchen used richer fat in smaller doses. Number 11. Children did real chores every single day. You did not sit around a 1970s black household. Before school, you made your bed. After school, you swept floors and took out the trash. On weekends, you washed dishes by hand, hung laundry on the line, raked the yard, and carried bags of groceries up 3 flights of stairs if your family lived in a walk-up. Chores were not optional, and they were not rewarded with an allowance. They were simply what every child did, and they burned more calories in an afternoon than most modern children burn in a full day. Number 10. Nobody ate after dark. When the kitchen closed for the night, it closed for good. Your mother washed the last dish, wiped down the counter, and turned off the light. That light going off was the signal. If you walked into that kitchen at 9 o'clock looking for something to eat, you were told to drink some water and go to bed. Late-night eating, the kind that fills modern pantries with microwave popcorn and ice cream pints consumed at midnight in front of a screen, simply did not happen. The kitchen had operating hours, just like every business on the block. Number 9. Dancing was the main social activity. On Friday and Saturday nights across black neighborhoods in Detroit, Harlem, Chicago, and Memphis, people danced. House parties with the furniture pushed against the wall. Basement parties with a single bulb and a record player. The hustle, the bump, the four corners. You moved for hours. You sweated through your good shirt. Dancing was how black communities came together on weekends, and it happened to be one of the most effective forms of cardiovascular exercise there is. Nobody counted the calories they burned on that dance floor. They just knew their shoes were worn through by Sunday morning. Number 8. Kitchens were smaller and refrigerators were smaller. This is the one most people have never stopped to think about. A 1970s refrigerator held a fraction of what a modern unit holds. You could not stockpile food because there was physically nowhere to put it. That limitation forced families to shop more often, buy less at one time, and eat what was in the house before it went bad. The small refrigerator acted as a natural governor on how much food entered the house and how much any one person could eat in a given week. When the storage space shrank, the intake shrank right along with it. Nobody planned it that way. The kitchen just enforced it. Number 7. Canning and preserving kept food whole all year long. In the rural South and in black neighborhoods across the Midwest that still carried rural habits into the city, women spent the last weeks of every summer canning vegetables from the garden. Mason jars filled with green beans, pickled beets, stewed tomatoes, pepper relish, and fig preserves lined the basement shelves and crowded every pantry. Factory canned goods from a grocery store carry added sodium, refined sugar, and chemical preservatives. Home canned food has none of that. The vegetables that went into those jars were picked that morning, cleaned at the kitchen sink, blanched, and sealed with nothing added but a pinch of salt. What came out 6 months later was still whole food, and the body processed it the way whole food is supposed to be processed. The women who spent August afternoons sweating over a pot of rolling water, filling jar after jar, were not thinking about nutrition labels. They were thinking about feeding a family through the cold months on whatever the garden had given them that year. The health benefit was a side effect of the survival instinct, and every sealed jar on that shelf was proof of both. Number 6. Stress was handled on the porch and in the pew, not in the pantry. When life got hard in a 1970s black household, and life got hard often, the response was not to open the refrigerator. Women sat on the front porch after dinner and talked to their neighbors. Men gathered in the yard or leaned against the counter at the barber shop. On Sundays, the whole family carried their burdens into the church. Emotional eating, the kind that sends modern Americans to the drive-thru after a bad day, was managed by community instead of calories. The porch was the therapist. The church was the prescription. Number 5. Sugar was for weekends and holidays, not for every day. There was no candy jar on the kitchen counter. Dessert happened on Sunday after church dinner, and sometimes not even then. A child might get a peppermint out of a grandmother's purse or a thin slice of sweet potato pie at Thanksgiving, but sugar was not a daily presence. Cereal was not coated in it. Juice was something you drank a small glass of in the morning, not a full bottle with lunch. The baseline sugar intake of a 1970s black household was a fraction of what a modern family consumes today without even noticing. Number 4. Vegetables were the star of the plate, and meat was the supporting act. This surprises people raised on the idea that soul food is nothing but fried chicken and pork ribs piled high. In a 1970s black household on a tight weekly budget, meat was expensive. You got a small portion of it alongside a mountain of collard greens, black-eyed peas, butter beans, rice, yams, cabbage, and a wedge of cornbread. Those vegetables were not side dishes. They were the meal. Meat showed up to season the pot and add flavor, not to dominate the plate. That vegetable-heavy way of eating, born entirely out of economic necessity, turned out to be one of the healthiest ways any family could fill a plate. Number 3. Nobody in that household ever sat still. Your grandmother was always moving, sweeping something, wiping something, hanging something on a clothesline, shelling peas on the porch, stirring a pot with one hand, and holding a child on her hip with the other. Your grandfather was in the yard or under the hood of the car or up on a ladder fixing the roof. There was no concept of sitting down in the middle of the day and doing nothing with your hands. Rest happened at night, in bed, after everything on the list had been finished. Every waking hour carried some form of movement, and the cumulative effect was a body that never had the chance to store what it did not use. Number 2. Clothes had to fit, and the community noticed if they stopped fitting. In the 1970s, black families took deep pride in how they presented themselves. Sunday clothes were pressed and fitted. Your mother knew every measurement on every person in that house, and when a waistband got tight, she said something about it before you made it to the front door. The neighborhood noticed, too. If you gained weight, your aunt mentioned it at the next gathering. Your church sisters brought it up over the phone. That kind of attention was not cruelty. That was a community that paid close attention to its own. And that attention kept people aware of how they carried themselves every single day. Number 1. The whole block ate the same way. This is the reason that holds every other reason together. In a 1970s black neighborhood, your household was not making these choices in isolation. Every family on that block was cooking the same food, walking the same sidewalks, sending their children outside to play the same games, attending the same church, eating on the same schedule, and living within the same tight budget. There was no outlier household ordering fast food every night while the rest of the block cooked from scratch because the fast food had not arrived yet. The environment itself was the diet plan. The community itself was the accountability. Nobody stayed slim through personal discipline alone. They stayed slim because the entire world around them was built in a way that made gaining weight almost impossible. Nobody in that decade called it clean eating or intermittent fasting. They just called it Tuesday. The bodies those families carried were shaped by kitchens that closed after dinner, sidewalks that served as highways, gardens that fed the table, and a community that held every member accountable without ever reading a single nutrition label. Which one of these hit closest to home for you? Drop it in the comments.